If you have an empty seat next to you, can you wave your arms around, please? We've got a few people looking for spots. Look for those arms. Okay, thank you. I might do that again in a minute. All right, if everybody can please make their way to their seats, we're going to get started. I think we kind of tricked everybody today because it was a 10 o'clock start time. Usually these start at 9. So thank you for being here early and in your seats and ready to learn. So good morning, my name is Ray Fernandez. I'm the 2019 PWR President. I want to thank everyone for attending our first event of the year. It's obviously, looks like we're sold out, definitely a full room. Before we get started, I wanted to thank all our sponsors. Hopefully you all had a chance to go up and speak with everyone in the back of the room. They're the ones that keep these events free for you. So the more you go and talk to them, the better. Thank you for being here, sponsors. I'd also like to recognize PWR's leadership. We have a new board of directors for 2019. And at our CAR meetings, we announce a lot of names, and the applause gets kind of tiring. So we do a thing at CAR, we call it the one clap. So I'm going to have my board of directors please stand up, everyone that's in the room. And as I announce their names, we're just going to do the one clap, just like that. Okay? All right. So Stephanie Godel, she's the president-elect. Barbara Betts, immediate past president. Rick Violet, our vice president. Stephen Mead, our secretary-treasurer. Shauna Drum. Brian Arahan. Terry Cargis. Jeremy Lehman, who actually just showed up finally. Craig Martin. Rick Martinez, Paul Perungian, Judy Sharp, Beth Sparks, Glenn Hellier, Phil Jones, and Jeff McIntosh. Thank you very much. Being on the board is a lot of work, guys, and all these people that we just clapped for, we're all volunteers, and it takes a lot of work, a lot of time and effort, and I want to thank the board for everything you guys do. You guys make me look good. Now, let's get Phil Schaefer up here. Phil Schaefer is the president of our PWR Charity Foundation, and he's going to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance and inspiration.
Stand up. And say with me the pledge. If you'll put your hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. One of the great privileges of being a realtor is to, that for me, being involved at CAR and NAR and many different groups out there, is how patriotic realtors are. That is the one thing, whether you're Republican or Democrat, we love America and we love our communities. And I love how realtors very often are the salt of their community. You guys are on the PTA, you're in your neighborhood association involved. You are on the front line doing things. You're in the Rotary Club. You're cheerleaders for your communities, right? Not everybody has a billboard like Ray as you enter into their neighborhood, but you know, we all love what we do, and we love people, and we love our communities. And so I don't know how many of you have seen this launched on Monday, the nationwide advertising campaign. Has anybody in the room seen it? It is awesome. It says, the tagline is, "That's who we are," and it's got the realtor R's with the R. So very tricky, I think. But great stories about realtors and what they do and what they contribute. We're not a computer program. We're not the lowest, cheapest model out there. There's a lot of disruptors today, and Joel is going to be talking about that, no doubt. But we are real people that care about our clients, and we do things that computers can't do. And one thing that we've been challenged with at CAR and NAR, both our NAR president this year, John Smady from Minnesota, and your CAR president, Jared Martin from Fresno, both are challenging every one of you to tell your story. And we need to do a better job of that as realtors. We need to do a better job of telling our story. So I'm going to model that just real super quick for you. When I was in my 20s, I bought my first place. It was a 2-bedroom condominium with a carport, and it had inside laundry. And I thought that was awesome because that was better than the apartment that I was renting at the time. My payment more than doubled what I was paying in rent. I was scared to death if I was going to be able to afford that. And you know what? It was easy. The payment was there every month. It was never a problem because it was mine. It was ours. And it was where, you know, I started my young life as a young adult. Fast forward many years and a few houses up the food chain. When I bought that first place, I borrowed $3,000 from my mom and $3,500 from my in-laws. My father-in-law made me sign a note, and he recorded it. I've not seen that happen very often in 30 years in real estate, but anyway, we paid those loans off to our folks within a year and a half. That was our priority. We wouldn't go, you know, out to eat. We'd say that's $50 we can use to pay down that debt. Today, I'm in a house that's $2 million. It's amazing to see how it just kind of over time you build wealth in real estate. You can move up and you can do things. And so many young buyers I work with today are like, oh, I want my dream house. I'm like, no, you're not buying your dream house. You're buying your first house. Your first house just gets you in the door, right? It gets you started. And then hopefully they come back to you and they buy a move-up house. And they move up and up and up. Maybe sometimes then they start moving down at the, you know, once the kids are all grown and gone and that sort of thing. But it's all of you in the room that make that happen. And we need to tell our stories, even if it's just to our customers. We need to share our experience, what it's like. Yes, I was nervous buying a house. Yes, I stretched further than I was comfortable, all these things. So I really want you guys to own that this next year. You're going to see that message coming through CAR and NAR, so use it to your advantage. Okay, the other thing I want to talk to you about real quick is, as president of the Charity Foundation, we get to help some of those first-time buyers. And nobody has been more generous than the PWR members, so thank you all for supporting our Charity Foundation. We have raised well over $1 million in the 20 years that we've had a Charity Foundation, and we've given all of that money away. In fact, we've given so much away we have none left to give. We need to make more money every year. And one way, or the next way that you can help us do that is going to be on June 20th. Now, we have a golf tournament every year. How many people in the room do not golf? So at least half of you, right? You can support the Charity Foundation by coming to the event. We'll have a great meal at the end of it. We have a helicopter golf ball drop, so you can buy golf balls and you can win like $10,000 off of that, which is pretty cool. And it's a lot of fun to watch the balls come out of the sky. Anyway, we've listened to the golfers, and we've got a new location this year that we've never golfed before. It's going to be at the Tustin Ranch Golf Club, which is a beautiful golf course if you haven't been there. It's normally $200 to play there. Our tournament is only $179, and it includes all your food and a lot of drinking on that. So I hope that you guys will go online, sign up, talk to friends, clients, anybody that you know that is a golfer, and support our foundation with that. It's going to be on June 20th of this year, which is a month earlier. Last year it was in July, and it was a little toasty out there in Anaheim. So we moved it a little more inland, and a month earlier, and I think it's going to be a great time. So please, please, please support our Charity Foundation. It's something that you all own, and it belongs to us as realtors. It's a way we can make a huge difference to veterans and first-time buyers. So thank you very much.
Okay, before we move on, quick reminder, anybody that did not check in, make sure you check in before you leave, because otherwise you're going to be charged the no-show fee. So if you haven't checked in, we've got the staff at the front, and make sure you go check in. Next, I want to introduce PWR's Government Affairs Director, Tim Shaw, with his legal update.
I was supposed to include a part of my bio of best looking man alive, Tim Shaw, but I forgot that part. It's good to be with you all this morning. Never a dull moment in the world of government affairs. Well, I found this, there's a famous quote from someone named Gideon Tucker back in the 19th century. He wrote, "No man's life, liberty, or property are safe while the legislature is in session." And that's been used a lot. So on that note, our great state legislature here in California is in session. Believe it or not, they've introduced 2,576 bills. We just had the deadline, they had to have their bills introduced, so 2,576 bills out there. So it's going to be, that is a record even for them. So we have a lot to monitor up there in the Capitol. A lot of them do affect housing too, but I wanted to quickly talk about our great victory last year in November with Proposition 10. We were able to defeat Prop 10, thanks to your all work. So let's give ourselves a round of applause. Prop 10 would have repealed the Costa-Hawkins Act. It's long been a pillar of the real estate industry and business here in California, so we were very happy to see that not only go down handily. So I think that really sent a message. So thank you for all your hard work on that. Unfortunately, we were not as happy with the results on Proposition 5, which we wanted to pass, which unfortunately did get defeated. Proposition 5 dealt with the issue of tax portability. Because of Prop 13, of course, when you buy your home, your piece of real estate, it locks in that property tax basis going forward. So people who've owned their home for decades and decades, they're enjoying that low property tax. But what it kind of has the unintended consequence, perhaps, of doing is making it so people don't ever want to sell their home because they got that low property tax. And now that their kids are grown and out of the house, they're there in their 4 or 5 bedroom house, and it's more house than they need, but they don't want to ever sell. So if we made it a little easier to move along that Prop 13 tax basis to their new home, most likely they would go ahead and maybe downsize and to right-size their housing. So now we have the family with all their kids at home, have that bigger house to move into. So part of the problem with our market out there, as you guys well know, is that we just don't have enough inventory out there on the market and supply of housing. We think that allowing that portability to happen would get a lot of people selling their homes, and we could kind of go a long way towards addressing the housing shortage that we see out there. So while Prop 5 failed last year, we are looking to maybe make some modifications, and we're going to try to, it's a great idea, so we're not going to drop it. So hopefully this year we can make a few tweaks to it and get it passed, hopefully through the legislature would be ideal, or if not, our state association will decide maybe we'll make another run at the ballot box in 2020, and maybe with some changes we can get it passed next go around. So let's stay tuned on that, but that's a great idea and something we can be proud to be supportive of. We are a little concerned looking out there as well with what might be happening with the issue of split roll property tax. Of course, Prop 13 applies to all real estate, residential or commercial. There's long been kicked around the idea of maybe just eliminating Prop 13 for commercial real estate. They call that split roll property tax. So every year, commercial real estate would be reassessed, and then property tax could rise on that. So one of the reasons, out of many that we don't like that, you can imagine if you were a city government or any level of government that has the ability to approve projects, if you know that you're going to get a lot more tax revenue out of commercial real estate as opposed to housing, you can imagine every city, every county, everyone's going to want just to have all real estate become commercial real estate, because you're going to get more tax revenue out of that. So it would be another reason for a local government to not want to have housing. So we don't like the idea of split roll property tax, and so we will be out there fighting it. Our dear friends in the California Teachers Union Association recently endorsed split roll, so that they're a big player politically, of course. So we're gonna there is a lot of juice on the other side, perhaps, to bring about split roll. So we're gonna have to really roll up our sleeves to fight on that one. Watching Governor Newsom, our new governor, in action is interesting already for our industry. He campaigned very strongly on the idea of adding 3.5 million housing units to the state of California, to have 3.5 million houses built out there, housing units. And so now that he's in office, you can see he's trying to make good on that promise. He has a whole bunch of housing proposals. Got a lot of press. One of his approaches is perhaps just to start suing cities that aren't getting on the ball with housing. He's suing Huntington Beach right here down the street because he doesn't. They were kind of have a case of the slows on housing. So he has another list. He made a list of 47 cities that are basically been warned. Get your act together, or I'm going to sue you too. So he's going to be suing cities. In his budget, he proposed to withhold transportation dollars from cities that aren't approving enough housing. A whole myriad of incentives and kind of carrots and sticks approach to basically force local government to start approving housing. One of the problems, the reason we're so behind as a state, the approval process, basically happens at the local level. And at mostly, when you see this happen at city council meetings or whatever, a lot of people show up in the room saying, not in my backyard, right? No more housing in our city, let that be built somewhere else. So, because that's just happening all over the place, not enough housing that we're getting approved. So he's gonna kind of start, pushing cities into making that happen. We even see legislation. There's a bill out there right now, Senate Bill 50, that we are supportive of, that basically takes away from cities the ability to say no to housing within a certain radius of transit stops, a train station or a bus, even a bus stop perhaps. So you could get high density housing built around transit stops. That's the idea behind that bill. So a lot of bills like that and ideas like that percolating in the legislature that would certainly impact us. We've had our ongoing issues and concerns with the LA County Board of Supervisors. They no longer say the words rent control. You're going to hear the words rent stabilization. It's the same thing. So when you hear rent stabilization, just be advised what that is. In the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors, they recently approved rent control in essence for the unincorporated parts of LA County. And now that was kind of deemed as temporary. We'll see how temporary that ends up being. But what we've done, Pacific West, along with most all the other realtor associations across Los Angeles County, apartment associations, the builders, we've all come together and formed a coalition. We've hired a lobbyist, and we're closely monitoring the LA County Board of Supervisors because they're up to no good, and so we want to keep a close eye on that. So where you guys can come in, I want to make a pitch here. When we do have real big important votes that are going to come up in the state legislature or back in Washington, D.C. in Congress, we put out a red alert asking you guys to contact your representative. If we need a yes vote or a no vote, it'll be real clear when you get the email or the message. All you got to do, we make it so easy. Just click on, the link and you type in your name and address. And it's very simple. Just click submit. It'll send an email to your representative saying, I urge you to vote, yes on this bill or no on that bill. My job prior to working for Pacific West, I worked for a state senator for 7 years, and I'll tell you how it works. Right before they go up onto the floor to vote on a bill, the staff up in the Capitol presents, they'll tell the senator or the assembly member, Senator, here's how many constituents we heard from in your district on this bill. This many wanted you to vote yes, this many wanted you to vote no. So they do have that information moments before they're pushing yes or no on their desk. So it is very important to get, for our industry as realtors, to have our voice heard, and we make it, I think, super easy for you. So please take action when you see those red alerts coming from the association. It'll only take a minute or two, and I think it's well worth it. So keep your eye out for that. And the other thing, I have a job part-time besides Pacific West. I teach political science part-time at a community college up in Whittier, Rio Hondo College. In my textbook, we have a great quote from someone, a lobbyist, who said, talking to politicians is fine. With a little money, they hear you better. So I thought that was a great quote. So with a little money, they're going to hear us a little better. So on that note, we have our Realtor Action Fund. It's our political account. It's just funded 100% from you guys as you contribute Now, Pacific West does a phenomenal job at you guys. So let's give ourselves a round of applause. Thank you for your great work. It's really fun being the Government Affairs Director for Pacific West when we go to the state association meetings and we kind of look at the different associations and how much, you know, our members are contributing to the Realtor Action Fund, and it's like, you know, I'm sitting up there like here and everyone else, you know, so thank you for making me look good out there. But in the world of raising money for the political account, you could always do better, right? So we have a little form here. If if you're able to contribute at a higher level, we would certainly welcome that and appreciate it. These dollars get used to support candidates that are friendly towards us, as well as fight issues. For example, Prop 10 and Prop 5, we're going to have some real blockbuster issues out there. So with these dollars, we can run our campaigns around those issues, and I would strongly implore you, if at all possible. You get a cool pin too. I gave $449, and that's the California Bear, so they'll give you a pin, and there's different levels of giving. You can be proud of that. So where's Christine at? There's my colleague, the other Government Affairs Director for Pacific West, Christine Schachter. Let's give her a round of applause. So see Christine or myself, if you're able to afford a little extra for the Realtor Action Fund, we would appreciate that, and it's just a real simple form. So thank you for all you do, and let's go have some success out there in real estate. Thank you.
Okay, first I want to throw out a shameless plug. 3 p.m. today, 2:30. I'm sorry. Sorry, Madam Past President. 2:30 today is we go live with Barb and Ray. Who's been watching Live with Barb and Ray? You guys enjoy it? Is it kind of entertaining, fun? So we go live on Facebook and YouTube today at 2:30. So anybody out there that wants to watch, it's going to be more interactive, so we can answer questions, and we actually really do just wing it. Everyone doesn't believe us, but we show up 20 minutes before and figure out what we're going to talk about. So if you guys ask questions while we're doing it, we'll be happy to answer, and we'll probably be excited to answer some questions as they come in. Now I want to go ahead and introduce our 2019. He is the Chief Executive of CAR, California Association of Realtors. Say that 3 times fast. And Joel Singer. He's going to come up here and give us his economic forecast. So I'm sure everybody's got a pen and paper. Take a note of this, that we will be taking questions at the end. And as questions come up, we need you to text forecast to 22333. So again, that's text forecast to the number 22333, and then we will take some questions at the end. Thank you, Joel.
Good morning. I'm going to start out with an apology. Economists should always apologize before they speak, but I'm going to doubly apologize. I'm slightly jet lagged. I got back from Vietnam yesterday, or the day before yesterday. So that makes this time right now for me is, let's see, it's Thursday morning at 1 a.m. So bear with me. The other thing to keep in mind is, one of the oldest stories about economists. And an economist is someone, by definition, who's good with numbers, but doesn't have the charisma to be an accountant. I'm going to try to stay awake and to be a little more exciting than an accountant. I do have a lot of material for you. What happens is, quite frankly, the staff put together a bunch of stuff, and I just didn't have a chance to go over it the last day. So I've got a lot of material. But before I start going through the material, I want to be as candid as I can. And I want to put a little bit of perspective on where this market is. Because I think for those of you who haven't been around through a couple of cycles, it might be a little different for you. How many of you have been selling real estate for 5 years or less? Okay, for you guys, this is going to be a little bit of a different world. And the point I want to make, more than anything else, is that this is going to be a marketplace that is actually going to be predicated, for the first time in a while, on your ability as salespeople. If you look at what's occurred in this marketplace, particularly for the last 4 or 5 years, the challenge was real simple. Get a listing and watch it sell. That's not the challenge going forward. The challenge now is to do what I think realtors do incredibly well. And that is make the sale happen. Because I think what we're looking at, and you're going to hear things about, I'm going to give you some bad news in terms of a month or so of data. You're going to hear some things that are pretty pessimistic. But quite frankly, this market is much more normal of a market than the last 4 or 5 years. And I guess I can relate from my own experience, my family's experience, quite frankly, and my own personal experience, that every real estate, and I've been lucky enough to do a few real estate transactions. I do own a little bit of investment property. Every good real estate transaction I've ever done wasn't done because I wanted to jump up and do it, and I was convinced. It was done because a realtor sat down with me and explained to me why it made sense to get into that marketplace despite my nervousness and despite my caution, despite my concern. And I think that's the market that we're getting back into. You're going to have to be in a market where you're going to have to rely on your sales skills. You're going to have to talk much more about the long run. You're going to have to also be in a position to take advantage of opportunities, because we are now switching into a little different marketplace. It's going to be a marketplace where there's opportunities now for buyers, quite frankly, as opposed to the marketplace we've seen for the last few years where the opportunities have been one way on the sales side. So again, that's kind of my caution. And I'll just make one other observation. I'll talk about it at the end. The market right now is a bit weaker, there's no question. I personally think it's going to get a little better in the next few months, and I'll talk about that. But the fact of the matter is that the demand for real estate, the interest in purchasing real estate, continues to be very, very strong. The problem in California is not that people don't want to own California real estate. The problem in Orange County is not that people don't want to own Orange County property or don't want to live in California. The problem is that they can't because of affordability. And in a sense, what we're going through now, there's a couple things. One, it eliminates some of that pressure. The constant erosion in affordability that we've seen for the last 10 years, or at least the last 8 years, is going to ease. And by the same token, it's going to be an opportunity for buyers coming to the marketplace on a much more equal footing than they have been for the last few years. So with that in mind, let me talk about how we got to this, what I would call a realtor's market. Again, the fact of the matter is market conditions, the data we just put out last month, show that market conditions do continue to soften. Sales are down double digits. Price growth remains near the lowest levels since early 2012. But by the same token, the fundamentals are still solid. And there's windows of opportunity for buyers, as I said before. Sorry, I'm having to adjust to these slides a little bit. So how did we get here? Let's go back a little bit and just deal with the facts here. California is simply not building enough housing. Our needs for housing are estimated at 180,000 units a year. If you look at our history, we haven't met that number since 2005. If you look at where we've been just over the last 10 or 12 years, we've added 1 million unit shortfall And that's why prices and affordability are so constrained. Now, this tight supply not only pushed up home prices, but it also created a market that was really unusual. We had a market where there was almost unlimited demand and very little inventory. And as a result, homes were sold, as many as 1/3 of them in Orange County were sold above the asking price. However, that's going to be one of our issues, right? When you have sellers who are still expecting this, and hopefully by now they've seen 6 months of price adjustment, they don't, that's going to make it an intriguing market. And if we look at the market by other indicators, this slide on the right-hand side talks about the median price discount. We've basically been in a 2-week market for the last 6 years with no price discounting. And that's just not normal. So again, what I would argue is that we're going back into a more normal market. The problem is that people remember, on the sales side in particular, they remember the high price, they remember the strong market, and they've forgotten what's happened. And to a degree, you've got the data to talk to them about it. The normal market is a market that is a balanced market. Unlike the market that we've seen where there's been no inventory, inventory has been on the order of sometimes weeks, 2-3 weeks of inventory. The normal inventory figures that we use are 4 to 7 months. We're getting back to that level. And if you look at what's occurred, again, looking long term, you see that also prices in California do go up and down. And if you look particularly at this data, you can see the plunge in prices from May 07 to February 09, where we went down 60% from the peak. That's unusual. And that's not going to happen again. But by the same token, we have to recognize that we're back above our previous median record. And prices, again, are extremely high when compared with other places. So, what does this mean? What's slowing the market? Because the fundamentals, as I said, were good. And the issues are real obvious. People just don't have money to buy in coastal California. We have had so good of a period with so much of a price run-up that people can't afford to buy. When we, this is a survey we did a few months ago, during the peak of the 18 selling season. And it's real obvious. Everybody says, I gotta wait till I get the down payment. I gotta wait until my finances improve. Some people say there's no urgency. People are just not able to find the home they want. And again, 50% of the people who we talk to say they've been saving for 5 years or more, for 50 years, yeah. 50%, sometimes it seems that way. 50% are saving for 5 years or more before they can even enter the marketplace. So we have to recognize that part of this is that we're victims of our own success in a marketplace where far too little has been built. Now, if we look at it from the standpoint housing affordability also is starting to have a bigger impact. And this is what actually does concern me, more than the change in the marketplace, is that we're starting to see out-migration. And it is, when we ask people why they're leaving, they give you all sorts of reasons: quality of life, traffic, quality of schools, they're retiring. But the #1 reason is housing affordability. We are starting to drive the next generations out of California because they can't afford the house that they like. Now, one of the things some of us have observed is people who leave California and buy a house in other places often come back. One summer in Phoenix might be enough for most of us. But on the other hand, I have to be very candid with you. There are a lot of places that are pretty attractive. Anybody live in Colorado Springs or Austin, Texas, or Denver, or parts of New Mexico? When you can get a house that's affordable, these are attractive places to live. We can't continue to expect everyone's going to want to be in California at any price, because what we're already seeing is that that's not the case. And if we look at out-migration, which really concerns me, if we look deep into the future, we talk about first-time buyers. Housing affordability is 49% of the reason they leave the country. They leave the state, sorry. Half of the people leaving the state who are first-time buyers say it's because they want to buy a house. So that's a two-edged sword, right? It's bad news because they're leaving, but it also proves the point I said earlier. People really, really want housing. And realtors, historically, what you do really matters. You put people into homes. The problem is we've got to find a way to put people into homes when everything is working against us simply because we're not creating enough new housing. And that's really the long-term struggle for all of us. And when Tim was speaking earlier about the political environment, about engaging in politics, engaging in public policy, and this association does an amazing job. It's really important because it's about our livelihood, it's about our success, but it's even more than that. It's about fundamentally what realtors do. If we don't start to address these kinds of issues, they continue to worsen. The things that make you a realtor, make you successful, make you feel more proud than anything else, putting that family into a home, watching the fact that they're going to have a different type of economic success than a renter family, for example. Watching them grow from one house to the other, watching them get an education for their children, watching them provide for their parents. Those things that make it so important, what you do on a day-by-day basis and don't get recognized for, are just going to become much more difficult and slip away. And so getting engaged is absolutely critical. Now, let's fast forward to where we are at this point. Because, actually, let me go back for a second. I've got this slide too. You know, if we look at the good news, if we look right in today's marketplace, even with the slowdown, the cash gain for sellers was the highest since 2006. So again, those you have success to point to people that if you enter this marketplace, it's still going to be very, very successful for you. And again, I think it's really, really important that we understand where we're going and what the implications are in the long run. So let me talk very specifically about today's market, if I could. What's happening in Orange County, by the way, Orange County is my bellwether county. When I want to know what's going to happen in the state of California, I look to Orange County first. You guys, for better or for worse, tend to be the leading county. Part of it is you're not quite as expensive, you're not quite as insane expensive as the Bay Area. By the same token, you're more expensive than much of LA, and you don't have quite the extremes. So Orange County is the best indicator. When the numbers in Orange County early last year started to change, and inventory started to go up, sales slowed a little bit. To me, that was the bellwether of what was going to happen in California. And in fact, it's not only happening in California, it's happening nationally. Housing confidence, which is the home purchase indicator, is down nationally. Not down a lot, and it's not down a lot in California in terms of people's desire to buy, but it is down. What's really, when we ask the question, we kind of ask it, is it a good time, a bad time, not a good time to buy? And you can see that it's down fairly consistently. 11% of the people are now saying it is not a good time to buy, whereas 52% are saying it's still a good time. So again, it's not terrible. When we, excuse me, that's California, that's the US. When we ask it in California, the numbers aren't that bad. If we say it's a good time to buy, 20% of the people still say it's a good time to buy. We never get up to these levels. Everybody just says it's a good time to sell a house in California, and you can see this. So again, in terms of interest in buying or selling, I don't think you're going to see a difference. You're going to see the same number of people you can prospect from. The question is, how many can you convert into sellers and or buyers? What's also interesting is that people haven't really adjusted totally to what's going to happen to prices. When we ask them over the next 12 months, what do you think is going to happen? Half of them say prices are up, only 20% say prices will be down, and 33% say flat. But that's a fairly substantial change from 4 or 5 years ago, because 50% of the people are now saying prices are going to be flat or down. And again, that's tough on the sell side, but it is a good, useful fact and should start influencing the number of buyers who want to take advantage of this opportunity. And so again, shifting your efforts towards buyers is going to make a lot of sense over the course of the next 12 to 18 or 24 months. And as I said earlier, we had a really miserable December number. That December number for the state as a whole was 357,000 units on the resale side. It was down 13% below last year, and it was the actual lowest number we've seen since 2008. Now, let me qualify that for a second, because I think we shouldn't read too much into it. If you look at these numbers that I'm showing here, this is a long run since the Great Recession. California sales have been remarkably flat. We've been selling between 400 and 450,000 units for most of that 10-year period since 2008, 11-year period since 2008. And there's two sides to that. The bad news is, given how low interest rates were, we should have been selling. And given how high our population is, we should have been selling at least 50% more units. Let me just put that into perspective. You can see, looking at January 05, we sold 600,000 units. Obviously, that was the liar loan period. There was a lot of people who thought they were buying a house, but they were just renting. They had no idea what they were really getting into. But the fact of the matter is, we're selling the same number of homes today in California with a population now approaching 40 million, as we sold when the population was 20 to 25 million. When I talked earlier about inventory, lack of supply hurting our business, that's where you really see it. We should be selling many more homes. So when you look at this decline at 12%, even though it's the worst number in 10 years, it really isn't that much of a decline because we've been selling at depressed prices anyway. Now, again, let me make two other observations. The last quarter of 2018, when these homes went into escrow and closed, there was a lot of economic uncertainty. Interest rates had also pushed far ahead of where they are today. So my suspicion is that the January closing number won't be great. And the February isn't great, obviously. The February number won't be great. But I think when you get into the spring selling season, the numbers are actually going to be higher than what we've just seen. So I don't think it's really locking us in to further declines, because the economy is fundamentally sound. But I do want to caution you that the risks in this forecast are down, not up. And again, the opportunities are not the same as they were last time. If you're not shifting your resources towards buyers, you're taking a business risk, because it's going to be about buyers as much as listings this next year. And to talk a little more about what happened in the marketplace, sales are down in all price segments. You can see that they're down. They're down in the lowest end simply because that product is disappearing. But they're also down at the 2 million plus range. And the Orange County statistics, which I think I'll get to in a bit, just document the same thing. It didn't help, of course, that we had market uncertainty. We didn't have market uncertainty, particularly the government shutdown. We can talk about government shutdowns as not being meaningful, but they're very meaningful in the stock market. We had a terrible last quarter of 2018, and they're very meaningful psychologically. And they're meaningful also because you had several days where you simply couldn't close a loan until they figured out that they had to provide the tax information, things that we need for underwriting purposes. So all of that contributed to the dismal January numbers. And you can see the impact among those directly affected by the shutdown was great. Now, I think we're past the shutdown period for a while. I hope we're past it forever. But that's one of those special factors that I think made the market look worse right now and looking backwards than it actually is going to be for the next few months. And so we need to take advantage of it coming back. Stock market volatility, as I said earlier, didn't help. The stock market has come back very nicely in January. That makes a difference in affluent counties like Orange County. So again, I think the on balance, we should see those numbers go up for the next quarter or two, but not back to where we were. And certainly the marketplace will continue to change in favor of buyers versus sellers. Now, I won't talk much about macro politics. Tariffs are another issue to the extent that we're making progress in the discussions with the Chinese and trade generally. That's obviously another positive. Market uncertainty. We did catch a little bit of a break, it seems to me, with the Fed. The Fed was going to raise rates to the point where we had at one point anticipated a 6% mortgage rate. We tend to think the mortgage rates will stay below 5% at this point. And most of the increase in interest rates will be at the short end, not the long end. And in fact, rates are down now about 50 points from the previous peak. Again, these are the types of things you want to talk to your buyers about because we are in a pretty interesting picture here now. For the first time, the market is approaching balance between sellers and buyers. If we look again at home prices, and this is also, I think, something I mentioned before. Prices have gone up dramatically. We're at a record level for the state as a whole, and you can see that they are starting now. Seasonally, obviously, the last half of the year usually sees prices coming down. We don't anticipate increases to be more than in the low single digits for the next year or two. In some price segments, I would argue that the higher the price segment, the lower the appreciation is going to be. And if you look at the market, particularly above $1 million, I think that marketplace is going to go very clearly to a buyer's market in Orange County if it's not already there. And again, when you're talking to sellers, you might want to talk to them in those terms as well. There is a little urgency in the marketplace. There's really no reason to wait if you want to list at this point particularly. So another way of looking at price per square inch, per square foot inched up from last year, but it's not very strong. We're up 2.7% year to year. And then again, as I said earlier, if we look at prices, they're softening, especially in the upper segments. And I think that softness is likely to increase, not decrease. Now, if we look at reduced price listings, the share of listings with a reduced price, and again, I think this is something you instinctively know when you talk to your sellers about. Everybody's expecting no reduction in my home to sell within a week or two, right? The fact of the matter is, in today's market, 40% of the homes, at a minimum, have a reduced price. We have a hard time tracing this number because realtors are very good at hiding what the prices were originally, and MLS will sometimes help with it. But 40% of the homes at this point already are facing reduced prices. And that's the discussion that you should be having, and I'm sure are having, with your sellers. The fact of the matter is the median reduction amount has been 4.3%, but in some market segments, and on the coast, it's been a little higher than that. So we know that we're already starting to see differences in a marketplace where you had overbids to a marketplace where you're looking at single bids. We know that the inventory, generally speaking, is higher, and we know, in fact, that means that sellers are going to have to price realistically. I won't go through an exercise, I think all of you know, but if you overprice your home, it's a bad strategy. And it's going to be a worse strategy in this marketplace than it was a year, 2 or 3 years ago. And again, we haven't seen this hit too hard. The sales price to list price is at the lowest level since 2015, but I think that number is actually going to get worse. And again, if you're dealing, how many of you have listings that are sitting on the marketplace and haven't sold? Come on. Come on. The evidence is here. And I think the dialogue that you have to have in this arena is a good dialogue. We have to educate people, because the longer this stuff sits on the marketplace, the more it compounds. And I have to say something else. Even though I said I think things are going to get better slightly over the next quarter or two, if you ask me about next year and the year after, I will say one thing. The economy, which is still pretty good, I would say very good generally, is not going to stay good forever. This is the longest post-World War II recovery we've ever had. If I have to bet, I would bet that no later than 2021 we will be in a recession. And again, there's data, you can pull this down, and again, I'm always skeptical when economists say, but 65% of economists now believe that there'll be a recession within 2 years. And so again, the urgency in the marketplace, which is what you do so well, creating that urgency, giving people the information to understand that acting and proacting earlier is always better than waiting, is out there. And that's why I think this is what I would say is a realtor's market. There is a silver lining. The inventory is the highest in nearly 3 years. And that gives you choice. For buyers who've been extremely frustrated, going out and making offers on 4, 6, 8 properties, they're going to have a better choice. But where this really makes a difference, it seems to me, is in the trade-up market. Your incentive to trade up over the last few years has been extremely limited, because even though you could sell your house well, you didn't know what you were going to replace it with, right? And so many people made the decision to invest in their home, to remodel their home, and not to list it. That had an advantage in terms of property taxation. That had an advantage, and is going to continue to have an advantage in terms of interest rate. I mean, this is the other problem we've got in California. If you're sitting on a 3.25 or a 3.5 30-year mortgage for the next few years, even if rates stay at 4.5, let alone if they go to 6%, you may hate that house, but you're going to love that mortgage. And so we're going to have problems prying people out of their homes. And again, right now, when the gap is small, when we're looking at a 4.5% rate, the trade-up buyer, somebody who's thinking about it, has a lot more choice today than they're going to have a few months, or in my view, a year or two out. And so again, those are things that we have to bring to the attention of our sellers, our potential sellers. Active listings continue to increase. It's been 10 consecutive months of active listing increases. And therefore, we're looking at an inventory that has gone from 3.6 months in January of last year to 4.6 months today. But it's clear that the market is much more balanced today. And the housing supply has improved in all but the lowest price segment, as I said earlier. Active listings have increased in all areas, and most, quite frankly, in Southern California, led by Orange County, as this slide will indicate. And the other thing, of course, is when you have this movement towards a balanced marketplace, you can look at it from of how did we get there. And again, in Southern California, the way we got there is sales are down 14%, and active listings are up 30%. In San Francisco, sales are only down 6%, but active listings are up 57%. And this translates again in talking to your sellers who have listed with you. We now see time on the market going up pretty dramatically. It's 37 days for the state as a whole. So let's talk now about Southern California, in particular in Orange County, how Orange County fits in with the Southern California. Because I think, as I said, you're not only the bellwether, you also actually, are performing as well, if not better, than other parts of Southern California. We look at the sales of existing homes, they're down in every area in Southern California. Orange County is down by about 10%. LA is down by about 15%. And you're looking at Riverside, even Riverside and San Bernardino, where you have very affordable housing, they are also down, as is San Diego by roughly the same amount as Orange County. Ventura County even worse because it's relatively higher priced. So when you look at these declines, Orange County is arguably outperforming the rest of coastal Southern California. And I think that's probably a pretty good bet, and also something, again, that can be discussed with those who are worried about their investment in housing, that Orange County has a tradition of outperforming. If we look at it over a 3-year period, you can see Orange County is not doing that well. You guys went down earlier, but you guys come up earlier too. And so as a result, even though you're down 8.8% in terms of sales, my suspicion is that you'll turn around before the rest of the marketplace. And again, this does create opportunities as well. On the price side, your prices are performing okay. You're up 2.1%. But again, if you look at Ventura, where I said we're having real problems because of affordability, they're down 7% already. And that, by the way, is the same as your top 25% of the marketplace. If you look at, and I can't remember where that number is, it's about 1.7 million, I think, and above, you are down in price performance in that area. If we go into a little more detail locally, the markets do perform differently. This number, and again, you guys are more familiar with it than I am, shows, Anaheim versus Anaheim Hills versus Brea. Brea obviously has a small number of sales, relatively speaking. They're down dramatically. I'm not quite sure, why Brea and Norwalk are down more substantially. But if you look at the marketplace, it's pretty general. A single-digit decline in sales in 2018, and that's pretty standard. If we look at the start of 2019, again, it's slow. We're down a little bit further in almost every marketplace than we were. And there's some big drops in a couple of areas where you're down 53% in Santa Ana, 53% in Anaheim Hills. But again, 1 month statistics don't tell us a lot.
There's a hide button.
Not quite sure what's going on with these slides here. There we go. And prices continue to moderate as well. If we look at January 19 prices, you can see they're up in almost every area. Brea's down, La Habra's down slightly, and that can change very quickly. Lakewood's down, but almost every area is up slightly as opposed to last year. But the pace of increase is definitely slowed. And again, this is one of the things when you have this data, it becomes meaningful to potential buyers, that the market now is giving them an entry point that they may not get again in the near future. So again, to state the obvious, the housing supply is up, the inventory is up rather, time in the market is up. You're looking at 57 days in your higher priced marketplaces. If you look at time on the market, and that's like a doubling in some places like Yorba Linda. Time on the market is doubled. And again, sharing this data with your clients will not only explain things to them, but will give them an opportunity to act rationally. And more sellers are making concessions, as we said earlier. The market clearly is showing that the sales to listing prices are dropping in almost every area. This slide here is one of the most valuable as you're dealing with sellers who are not really rational This is a slide that makes it clear. It's hardly unusual to have price cuts. That is the norm in the marketplace today, and it's likely to become even more so. So what about the rest of the year? As I said earlier, we should be doing better, quite frankly. We should be doing substantially better. The economic fundamentals are strong. GDP grew in the third quarter of 18, that's the last number we have, at 3.4%. Probably not as good in the fourth quarter, but it's still going to grow almost 3% this year. Consumption is going to be up 3.5%. The core CPI, inflation, is right at 2%. The unemployment rate is fabulous. It's at 4%. And job growth continues at 2%. Those are all strong numbers. All of those suggest that the marketplace would remain very, very strong. The wild card, as I said earlier, is, however, our pricing, our affordability. Now, if you look at rates, rates are down to the lowest level in 10 months. Again, I know all of you are out there, many of you are out there, talking to people who kind of left the marketplace on the buy side and have pointed this out to them because this, in fact, may be the last opportunity to take advantage of rates that are still quite affordable. And although we don't expect them to soar, again, the risk is more that they'll go up than they'll go down. Our guess is that they'll be much, much less than we would have said a year ago. But by the same token, this is a particularly good time. And just this week, for example, making kind of adding to my argument, applications for new mortgages this week went up 5.3%. So we're starting to see people realize that it is starting to become a better time to re-enter the marketplace. I think that's going to continue for the next couple, three. Now, just a warning, and again, I hope all of you use this kind of data. This is what happens when rates do go up. It really makes a difference in terms of your monthly payment, and it makes a difference in terms of your monthly qualifying income. And again, the extent to which you can show these to your prospective buyers, particularly those who were discouraged a year or two ago, this may be an opportunity to get them back in the marketplace. And so this is, again, from my standpoint, really a little bit of an opportunity here to redress the marketplace that was all about sellers into a marketplace that is much more balanced and actually has a lot of opportunity for buyers compared to what we've seen for last year. And again, one other point to make to your potential buyers is, no matter where rates are at this point, this is, for those of us who were around in 1981, this is all a joke, right? Rates are at 4%. This is the way it looks when you look at a 30-year run. And even though they've certainly gone up from a year or two ago, and by the way, this is another way of looking at it in your discussions with those who love their 3.25, 3.5 mortgage. Rates are low any way you look at it. And we have to remind people of that because, the trade-up market is also more abundant, and people just have to have a more realistic perspective. So we expect, list price, which are holding up pretty well, suggest a bounce back in sales price growth. And most importantly, as I started my remarks, what do you do really matters. The fact of the matter is we hear about millennials, they don't want a house, they want to rent. But the fact of the matter is, it is the American dream to own a home. And I don't see that changing in the short run. When we ask people, what is part of the American dream and how does housing fit in, many people say it's the most important. 1 out of 5 say it's the most important aspect of the American dream. By the way, if you do this with immigrants, it's even more the case. Over half say it's very important. So 3 out of 4 people recognize that the American dream is about housing. And you've got an incredible product to sell here in Orange County. Very few people say it's not important. Again, when we do this with immigrants, it's much more powerful. And, when we ask renters, what do they think? Most people don't say, I want to be a lifetime renter. 4 out of 5 renters want to own someday. It's an issue of timing. It's an issue of their ability to do it. The fact of the matter is that the product we have is a product that is desirable and a product that people want. And I think sometimes we forget that, and when the market gets tough, we think we've got a product problem. We don't have a product problem, we have a pricing problem. And to a large degree, that pricing problem is also one that you can explain. And you can certainly do all sorts of data, and we'd love to help you as you get into this. If you need more data, please contact us. And even renters, again, you know how tough it is, and we're dealing with rent control issues. 45% of renters plan to purchase within the next 5 years. This is in California. Unfortunately, they're not going to all be successful. And really our goal ought to be to figure out how to make it successful, how to get them on that first run of the home ownership ladder, because we are wasting an opportunity. We are seeing some of our best and brightest leave the state. We're going to become less attractive if we can't provide housing opportunities. And again, our problem is not our product. Our problem is not what we sell. Our problem is not the American dream. It's really about making it available to more and more people. So in conclusion, there are risks for this year. The trade war is a risk, there's no question. The stock market volatility is something of a risk. We got to be careful that the Federal Reserve doesn't overshoot on interest rates. We have a risk of Fannie and Freddie reform, further constraining the mortgage market. I hope that's not the case. This administration has not been housing friendly. The gentleman they're appointing to the FHFA, which is the body that really controls the behavior of Fannie and Freddie, is someone who doesn't believe in a 30-year mortgage. But the fact of the matter is, you know, we think for the reasons, you know, Tim outlined, that if the realtors engage, we'll be able to control that situation as well. And just a few final statistics on the U.S. economic outlook, which is, again, from our standpoint, positive. Will support not only the market we're describing, but an even stronger market. The same is true in California. I'll just point out on these California numbers that the most interesting part is that real disposable income, which went up 2.5% last year, is going to go up 3% this year. Normally, when you have a 3% growth in income, you have a boom in housing. So, you know, we're not going to have that boom because of affordability, but we can certainly make it a much better marketplace by stating our case, doing what realtors do. And I think it's going to be that kind of a marketplace for the course of this year. A couple of key takeaways, I hope. Prices will be effectively flat this year. The shutdown is limited, but there are other risks. Many still want to buy, and now's the window of opportunity. And I guess that's really my theme here, is that before rates climb further, and now that you have more balance in the marketplace, we need to talk about housing opportunities. We always talk about where the market's been, we talk about price increases, but we have to talk about housing opportunities in the big picture, in terms of the long run, and in terms of what housing really means. And some of you do that extremely well. And again, from my personal perspective, this marketplace for next year is going to be a marketplace for professionals. When the market is, an extreme, seller's market, as I say, all you got to do is get the listing. You don't even have to hang a sign up. Everything happens. If it's a marketplace that is an extreme buyer's marketplace, where the economy is so bad that buyers really do run away because they're worried about their entire economic future, there's not that much you can do. But the marketplace we're talking about for 2019 is a marketplace that is what I would call a balanced marketplace. We expect the inventory to be a 4 to 5 month inventory for the entire year. It's a realtor's marketplace where you can make a difference by sharing the right information, talking about the opportunities, talking about the risks, giving people the choices that they really have, not allowing them to generalize that, it makes no sense to move up, prices are going to fall. Give them the information. Show them that we're not building enough housing. Housing is a much safer investment at this point than it's ever been in California, from my standpoint. It's a much safer investment because the shortage grows. And for a whole series of reasons, I think this is a market where those of you who invest in yourselves, are professional, educate yourselves, are not only going to make a difference in your own lives economically, but you're going to continue to do what you've done so well. You're going to change lives by taking people and putting them into homes. And home ownership really, really matters. And I wish you best of luck in doing that. And thank you very much.
Okay, so can you hear me? Yeah, I think so. Okay, so we're going to ask a few questions. We got a handful of good questions, and I know the biggest takeaway I took away is the realtor marketplace. I like that. It means that we're going to have to get back to our roots and work hard like we should be and maybe haven't been doing. So with that being said, do you think with the market that we're heading into, it might start to reduce the amount of realtors that are out there working?
How do I say this nicely? Quite frankly, I hope so. And I don't want to offend anyone. I really don't. But most of you in this room take this seriously. You invest in yourselves. You spend a lot of time doing it. And many of you are experienced. I could tell by the way your hands went up on the couple of questions I asked. You have to, this is a complicated business. My job as your lobbyist in Sacramento is to make the deal, among other things, so complicated that nobody can do it but a realtor, right? I mean, that's my job, you know, so don't yell at me for... And the fact of the matter is, and like I say, I've been lucky enough to be in the market, if you're not doing 3 or 4 transactions a year, minimum, and there's people who just come in and are doing what we call biological transactions, it's not helping. And when we look at insurance, we look at things that go wrong, because the realtor, ultimately, the reason realtors are so successful is you guarantee the transaction. One way or the other, you guarantee it. By usually 90% of you doing a great job. Now, those 10% of deals that a great job isn't done, the realtor guarantees it by getting sued, right? And I'd like to see it be 100% of them being perfect deals. So I do think there's too many realtors, given our transaction volume. We're talking about 3 sides per year. That's on average, and we know that many of you are doing 20, 30 sides a year. So that leaves a lot of people doing 1 side. And that's probably, or 0 sides. And those are probably the people who are going to choose this point to exit, and it's probably not a bad thing for the rest of us.
Hello? You guys hear me on this? Turn it off?
Do it again.
I didn't
Hello?
touch it.
Oh, there it is. Okay. So a lot of the questions in here you answered through your very thorough the slides. One of the questions, we got a lot, is how can you get the presentation? It's going to be emailed to everybody that checked in. So make sure you checked in and you'll get that email to you. We'll do a couple more. How do you think the market will react in the 2020 election? That's loaded.
That's loaded. Look, in California, we already know what the mood of the people are in California. I'm still amazed, to say the least, what's happened in Orange County and the composition of our congressional delegation, where we have rejected the policies of this president. And again, I don't want to offend anyone or make any political statements particularly, but the fact of the matter is Californians have made the decision, you know, loud and clear, that issues such as immigration, closing the borders, things like that, are not issues that we're very attracted to. Even in a place like Orange County, you're not seeing a lot of attraction. So my sense is, you know, if Trump gets reelected, and it's possible. I think it's going to be very difficult for him to get reelected, quite frankly, because of the upper northern tier of states in the Midwest, who, you know, with 70,000 votes, he was able to pull 4 states. I think those states, at least 2 of them are completely lost, and 2 that he has to hold are just going to be very difficult. So I don't know what it's going to be, but in California, a change of regime would probably be welcome. And I think it would be good for the California economy. Again, that's an economic statement, not a political statement. Okay, now let me make,
All right, we'll do one more, knowing that you probably want to go home and go to sleep because it's 2 a.m. This one I thought was pretty interesting. What keeps you up at night, and what do you worry about?
At the moment, everything keeps me up at night. Ever tried sleeping when it's 6 a.m. and then you're supposed to be sleeping? What keeps me up at night, quite frankly, is a little bit of what I talked about. And again, this goes back to my own personal history. Home ownership was just so important to my family. My parents were immigrants. I remember when we got our first house. I remember my dad, for the first time in his life, owning something and how he felt and how he talked about it. I remember my sister and I got our own rooms, you know, and I thought this thing was a palace. You know, I got to paint my room blue. It was a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 970 square foot home. And home ownership really matters. I think it connects you to a community in different ways. That's why, you know, I consider myself one of the most fortunate people in the world. I've been able to work for realtors who put people into homes for 40 years, and it's been an honor to do that. What worries me is I think we're failing a little bit. The homeownership rate is dropping. And from my standpoint, that has terrible impacts on the people who need help the most. Because homeownership is the thing that differentiates you. As I said, I know what it meant to my family. If it wasn't for that home, it wasn't for the fact that a couple of realtors forced my parents, literally across the kitchen table, forced and persuaded them to buy a couple of investment properties in West Los Angeles. My parents, who had a great second half to their life, after coming here with nothing, being brought over by the United Nations, I know what it is you guys do. And anything that threatens homeownership, to me, not only keeps me up at night, it keeps me motivated every day. So that would be my concern.
Thank you, Joel.
My pleasure.
Let's give Joel a big round of applause.
Again, I want to wish you all tremendous success over the course of the next year. If there's anything we at CAR can do, I think you know where to find us and to get a hold of our hotline. But my email address is joels@car.org. Don't hesitate to send me an email if there's anything I can do to help you. And we really appreciate what you do. Our job is to do everything we can to help you be more successful. And I want to also commend this particular association. You're lucky with the leadership you have, both volunteer and staff. You have an amazing association here. We look to this association for leadership, and they continually do it. And by the same token, we're going to have to be engaged. You know, I was really pleased to hear some of the comments that were made earlier today. We're going to have to be engaged. This industry has issues, and homeownership has issues. And as a result, I think we have to engage. And I'm just so pleased to see all of you here. If there's anything I can do to help, please let me know.
Thank you, Joel. On our last episode of Live with Barb and Ray, we both said that this is an important meeting to be to because we will now be able to intelligently answer how's the housing market, right? So does everybody have the answer for how's the housing market next time you get asked? Yep. So our next event is going to be on June 5th. It's our PWR Agent Summit. We hope to see you all there, and thanks for coming.
Oh, no, not your fault. It's not your fault. Where are you, sir? Definitely not your fault. my life. But I want to explain that to you that you have a bad attitude. Do your job right. You're the IT guy. You go over there, fix what you think you can fix first, then come back here and blame other things. I don't like that. And I know that's not, you know, that's not proper. This is Jones.